A woman, blonde, poised, impossibly composed, steps off a private yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. The sun catches her the way it would if someone had choreographed the whole thing. But no one did. This isn't a movie. This is real life. Her life. And the man standing at her side is not who you'd expect. His net worth? Over $2 billion. Her name? You already know it. Elin Nordegren. The name that, for years, was whispered alongside words like victim, betrayal, and divorce. The woman who married one of the most famous athletes in history, a man who had everything, and then watched, in real time, as the world discovered that everything was built on lies. 12 women. A decade of secrets. And a crash, literally, that changed everything. But here's what the tabloids never told you. What happened to her after? How she rebuilt herself from the wreckage of one of the most public humiliations in modern history. And why the man who did that to her is now, according to people close to the situation, struggling to watch from the outside. Tiger Woods built a legend. Elin Nordegren built a life. And tonight, we go inside both. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone broke you, drop a word in the comments. Just one word. You'll understand why by the end of this. But before we go any further, if stories like this one move you, stories that go beyond the headlines and into the actual human truth behind them, then you're exactly who this channel was made for. Hit that subscribe button. Because we're just getting started. Before the fairy tale. To understand where Elin Nordegren is now, you have to understand where she came from. And the truth is, she came from a world most people in America never saw coming. Born in Stockholm, Sweden in 1980, Elin grew up in a family that was well known but not wealthy in the way the term gets used in celebrity circles. Her mother, Barbro Holmberg, was a politician, later a cabinet minister. Her father, Thomas Nordegren, was a well-regarded radio journalist. Hers was a household where ideas mattered more than image. She was beautiful, yes. But she wasn't chasing anything. She wasn't crafting a personal brand or dreaming of Hollywood. At 19, she was working as a nanny, a Swedish au pair for golfer Jesper Parnevik and his family. That job brought her to America. And America, as it turns out, brought her to Tiger. By 2001, Tiger Woods was not just a golfer. He was a symbol. The most dominant athlete on the planet. A man whose every swing felt like it rewrote what human beings were capable of. Forbes named him the world's first billion-dollar athlete. Time called him one of the most influential people in the world. He was everywhere and he was untouchable. When he met Elin at the 2001 Open Championship in England, introduced by the Parneviks, it wasn't an instant fairy tale. At first, she wasn't interested. She turned him down. Multiple times. Think about that for a second. The most famous athlete in the world, and she said no. That detail matters. Because it tells you something about who Elin Nordegren was before the world decided who she should be. Eventually, she agreed to a date. Then another. And somewhere along the way, the Swedish girl who had come to America to look after someone else's children found herself falling in love with the man the whole world was already watching. They married in October 2004, at a private resort in Barbados. The ceremony reportedly cost $5 million. The guest list was curated. The photos were carefully controlled. From the outside, it was perfect. From the inside, well. That's a different story. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving 2009. 2:25 in the morning. A Cadillac Escalade rolled slowly out of the driveway of a mansion in Windermere, Florida. Then it kept going. Past the edge of the driveway. Into a fire hydrant. Into a tree. The airbags didn't even deploy, the speed was too low. But the noise was enough to wake the neighbors. Tiger was found outside the car, lying in the road, drifting in and out of consciousness. Elin was there. Golf clubs were nearby. The tabloids exploded. The speculation was savage. What actually happened that night has never been fully confirmed. But what came after that part, the world got to see in high definition. Within days, the first woman came forward. Then the second. Then the third. By the time the avalanche stopped, 12 women had been linked to Tiger Woods publicly, though the actual number reported in various investigations was higher. Text messages were leaked. Voicemails were played on national television. The story wasn't just a sports scandal. It was a cultural reckoning. And in the middle of all of it, Elin. She was the mother of their 2 children, Sam, who was 2 years old, and Charlie, who was 10 months. She was sitting inside that house, the house that the whole world now had a satellite image of, trying to understand how the life she thought she had was not, in any meaningful sense, the life she had been living. She later said, in a rare interview with People magazine, that she had felt completely blindsided. That she had no idea. And anyone who watched her in those months, the way she moved through the chaos with a stillness that seemed almost impossible, understood that what they were seeing was not weakness. It was a woman in the process of quietly deciding who she was going to be next. Tiger went to rehab. He gave a public statement in February 2010, a scripted, formal apology broadcast to an invited audience of journalists and friends. Elin was not in the room. She had not agreed to be a part of his image rehabilitation. That choice, more than almost anything else, told you everything. By August 2010, the divorce was finalized. The settlement was reported to be somewhere between $100 and $750 million, exact figures were sealed. But Elin walked away with enough to never need anything from anyone again. And then, she simply disappeared. Was Elin right to take the settlement and disappear? Or would you have done something completely different? Tell me what you think, because where this story goes next surprised almost everyone. Most people who leave public life after a scandal of this scale, they fade. They become a footnote. The world moves on, and they move into the background. Elin Nordegren did something else entirely. She went back to school. In 2014, at the age of 34, she graduated from Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida with a degree in psychology. She had studied part-time while raising 2 children, maintaining an almost complete media blackout, and living in a house on the Florida coast. She didn't announce it on social media. There was no photo shoot. No interview. The degree was just something she did, quietly, for herself. That detail, that quiet, private accomplishment with no audience, tells you more about Elin Nordegren than any tabloid cover ever did. She then demolished the old house. Literally. The oceanfront property in North Palm Beach, which she'd purchased for $12.2 million, she tore down and built something new in its place. Commentators and neighbors were baffled. The original house was worth tens of millions. But Elin didn't want a house with a past. She wanted to build something that was entirely hers. She sold it years later for $28.6 million. While this was all happening, while Elin was going to school, rebuilding property, raising her children, the world was also watching Tiger Woods continue to unravel. DUI arrest in 2017. More surgeries. More comebacks. More collapses. His personal life became a recurring drama in ways that seemed almost designed to remind the public of what he'd thrown away. And through all of it, Elin said almost nothing. She co-parented with him. She was photographed occasionally at their children's events, always composed, always warm with the kids, always just slightly out of reach of anyone trying to turn her into a character in someone else's story. Then, around 2013, something new appeared in the narrative. A name. Jordan Cameron. Cameron was a former NFL tight end, broad-shouldered, quiet, a man who had made his career in professional football but had no real public appetite for celebrity. He and Elin began dating sometime in 2014. They were photographed together for the first time almost accidentally, both of them looking like people who genuinely hadn't been trying to be seen. In 2015, their son, Arthur, was born. And something about that, bringing a new life into the world with a different man, a man who reportedly treated her with a steadiness she hadn't had before, seemed to mark a turning point. But then quietly, without explanation, she and Cameron parted ways. And the question the world has been asking ever since, who is Elin Nordegren with now? Here's where the story takes the kind of turn that, if you put it in a script, someone would tell you it was too much. Too cinematic. Too on the nose. Elin Nordegren, who was once the trophy wife of the world's richest athlete, quietly walked into a relationship with one of the wealthiest private figures in American business. A man so far below the radar of celebrity culture that most people, even now, would struggle to name him in a lineup. His name is Chris Klein. Now, here is where we have to pause and be precise about something, because the facts of this story are important, and they are also heartbreaking in a way that changes the emotional texture of everything that follows. Chris Klein was a West Virginia-born coal mining billionaire, a self-made man who built one of the most significant private coal fortunes in American history from almost nothing. He was known in business circles as the King of Coal. His net worth was estimated at over $1.6 billion at its peak. He owned a private island in the Bahamas. He was, by every external measure, the kind of man who existed in a world that most people only read about. He and Elin were reportedly together, a relationship that, like everything in her life since the divorce, was handled with an extreme level of privacy. Sources described her as genuinely happy. As having found, in Klein, a man who was not trying to perform for anyone, a man who was content to exist in a world away from cameras and headlines. And then, in July 2019, Chris Klein died. He was 60 years old. He was killed in a helicopter crash near his private island in the Bahamas, along with his daughter and 5 other people. It was sudden, total, and devastating. The grief that followed for Elin, already a woman who had been through more public and private trauma than most people endure in a lifetime, can only be imagined. She did not speak publicly about it. She retreated, again, into that private self that she had built so carefully over the years. This is the part of the story the algorithm doesn't tell you. Because the clicks come from the drama, from the jealousy angle, from Tiger watching from the sidelines. But the truth is that behind the billionaire boyfriend headline is a woman who was loved and lost in ways that would have broken a lesser person twice over. Something about this woman's quiet strength is just different. If this story is hitting you somewhere real right now, let this video know. It matters more than you think. Now, Tiger. Because you came here partly for this. And the honest version of this story requires us to spend some time inside what his life has looked like while Elin's has been unfolding the way it has. Tiger Woods spent most of the decade after the divorce in a kind of sustained public unraveling that would have been dramatic even if it had happened to someone less iconic. Multiple back surgeries, 5, by some counts. A DUI arrest in 2017, where he was found asleep behind the wheel with multiple prescription drugs in his system. A near-career-ending car accident in 2021, where he was driving alone in Los Angeles, lost control, and suffered injuries so severe that doctors initially considered amputating his leg. He came back. He always came back. That's the Tiger Woods story, the eternal comeback narrative. He won the Masters in 2019 in one of the most emotionally charged sporting moments in modern memory. The whole world, it seemed, exhaled together. But off the course, the story has been more complicated. His relationship with Erica Herman, his girlfriend of several years, ended in legal dispute in 2023. Herman filed a lawsuit alleging she had been misled and effectively removed from the home they had shared. The details that emerged were, again, unflattering. And through all of it, there was the ghost, the comparison that no one said out loud but that sat in every story about Tiger's personal life. Elin. Now, we want to be very clear here. We cannot confirm what Tiger Woods feels privately. We are not in his head. We are not his therapist. What we can say is this: multiple sources in the celebrity and sports media world, over the years, have referenced the idea that Tiger has, at various points, expressed regret about the end of his marriage. That in quiet moments, away from the cameras and the comeback narratives, the loss of Elin Nordegren has been a presence he carries. Whether that constitutes jealousy in the traditional sense, jealousy of the life she's built, of the men she's been with, of the simple, private peace she seems to have found, we can only speculate. But the framing is not invented. The emotional logic of it is real. He had everything. He threw it away. And the woman he threw it away with is now living a life that, by most measures, looks a great deal more peaceful than his. That's not gossip. That's just math. Here's a question I genuinely want you to sit with. Do you think Tiger Woods truly understands what he lost? Or do people like him never really see it until it's completely unreachable? Today, Elin Nordegren is in her mid-40s. She has 3 children. She has a degree in psychology. She has rebuilt 2 homes, survived 2 major losses, and lived through a public humiliation that would have consumed almost anyone. She doesn't have a verified Instagram. She doesn't do press tours. She appears at school events and holiday gatherings and is, by every account that filters out from the people who actually know her, a deeply devoted mother. She is also, by any reasonable measure, wealthy enough to do exactly whatever she wants for the rest of her life. She doesn't need Tiger's money. She doesn't need his name. She doesn't need the story. And yet, ironically, inevitably, the story keeps finding her. Because the world is still fascinated by her. Not by the woman she was when she was married to Tiger, but by the woman she chose to become when nobody was forcing her hand anymore. There is something deeply, uncomfortably human about the Elin Nordegren story that doesn't get said enough. It's this: she didn't get to choose her starting chapter. She didn't ask to be defined by someone else's betrayal. But she did get to choose every chapter after that. And she chose, over and over again, to be someone who could not be reduced to someone else's mistake. That's not a celebrity story. That's a human story. And it's one that will outlast every headline that ever tried to summarize her. The image I want to leave you with is a simple one. Somewhere in Florida, or maybe somewhere more private than that, there is a woman who has 3 children who know her as just mom. Not as Tiger Woods' ex-wife. Not as the woman at the center of the biggest sports scandal of the 2000s. Not as a settlement figure or a tabloid photograph. Just mom. She went to college. She demolished a house and built a new one. She loved again. She lost again. She survived again. And the man who once occupied the absolute center of the sporting world, who chased records and titles and a legacy he desperately wanted to be about more than his failures, is still, in some sense, in the process of figuring out who he is without the things he lost. Elin Nordegren figured out who she was without the things she lost. And that, more than any boyfriend, any settlement, any headline, is the real story. The greatest comeback in this story wasn't on a golf course. It was quieter than that. It was hers. And nobody televised it. If you're someone who believes that the most powerful kind of comeback is the one nobody sees coming, and you want to hear more stories like this one, this channel is where those stories live. You know what to do.